Niyi Borire is a multifaceted and dynamic individual, an award-winning neurologist, neuroscience researcher, lecturer, author, speaker, and change agent. He is on a mission to help people navigate change without losing their purpose, identity, and individuality. He is the director of Southwest Neurology and a neuroscience lecturer at the University of New South Wales. His research has won many awards, including the prestigious Gosset Young Investigator Award presented by the American Association of Neuromuscular and Electrodiagnostic Medicine (AANEM). He is also the founder and host of Brain, Mind, and Change, an online series which leverages on his scientific background and pastoral assignment to teach people how to achieve mastery of their brain, rewire their mind, and change their world. He is an Amazon best-selling author. He has written 2 books, including his autobiography titled Navigating Change: Timeless Secret for Growth in an Ever-Changing World. He and his wife, Yemi, pastor Beautiful Gate, Sydney, in Australia. They are blessed with 2 wonderful boys. Gentlemen, please make welcome Dr. Niyi Borire.
Hello, everyone. Wow, what an introduction. I don't think I've had that kind of introduction before. Thanks for going that far to make a video. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very grateful. And thanks to Mr. Bandeli for that wonderful talk. I was really blessed by that. Thanks to Shea Kinshala for having me as well. Thank you so much for giving me this platform. I don't take it for granted. God bless you. And to our daddy in the Lord, our father in the Lord, Pastor Bishop Bob Alunge. I'm not sure whether he's in the house yet, but I acknowledge you, sir. All right, great. So I will be talking about the wholesome mind, and I'm really pumped up for this, really excited for this, and I hope that we will get value. All right, and I will try to be as disciplined as possible so I stay within the time that I've been allotted. So I'll share my screen. I've got a few slides as well. This is going to be quite academic. All right. So I'm going to go in a very sort of academic way, but I'll make it as simple as possible. Can you hear me? Am I clear enough?
Yes, you can see.
All right, so I'm going to be very academic with this, but I hope that you get a lot of value from what I'll be talking about when it comes to the mind. All right, so I will be talking about the wholesome mind, the wholesome mind, the wholesome mind. All right, so let's go into this. So the brain and the mind, the brain and the mind. Now, I'm always very excited when I talk about the brain and the mind, and so just bear with my excitement, because this is something that I spent most of my life studying and most of my life, dealing with. So the brain and the mind. Now, one simple way of just introducing this topic before we go to the wholesome mind is to just understand that your brain and mind are separate, but they're also inseparable. So your brain houses your mind. So your mind I like to use this analogy, like your mind is like a software that runs on the hardware, which is the brain. Your brain is part of your body. And for those of you who have people of faith, you will understand that man is by nature a tripartite being. By creation, we're designed to be tripartite. So your soul, you have a spirit, you live in a body, or your spirit, you have a soul, you live in a body. All right. And so your mind is a part of your soul that defines your personality and that gives you your sense of identity. But of course, that connects with your body through your brain. So your brain is that physical expression of your mind. Your brain is a physical organ. Your mind is not an organ. Your mind is a part of your spiritual being. All right, but it's expressed through the brain. So your mind runs through the brain. So that's a connection. And it's very important to understand that. Now, the brain is a very complex organ. So many billions of nerve cells, or there are more than 7 billion nerve cells run through the brain. And every second, there are many electrical impulses that are just flying everywhere in the brain. And not just the brain, the nervous system, because your brain is the key part of your nervous system. And so the brain is really the central piece in terms of the organs of the body. Of course, the heart is important. There are other organs that are important. Every organ is important, but it's very essential and fundamental to get this point quite right. Now, why are we talking about a wholesome mind? I would explain that to you as we go down as we go along the talk. But I just want to set that foundation of the relationship, of the connection between the brain and the mind. I'm so sorry. I just want to get the way my screen is set up. I can't see my audience, and I like to just see the audience. So I'm just trying to figure out how to do that with Zoom here. My screen is just not allowing me to do that. So I want to find a way to fix this so that I can see everyone. Just give me a second, please.
Sorry, can I say that most people's video are off?
Okay.
So I think that you can see them.
Okay, fair enough. Good. All right, so I'll go on now. And yes, so let's talk about the mind. All right. And the wholesome mind. Before we talk about the wholesome mind or define the wholesome mind, I just want to talk about the mind and establish some principles, some basic principles about the mind. Okay. Now, this is a slide I like a lot. I've used it in other talks. The mind. All right. A very simple way of looking at the mind is to look at the mind from two angles. You've got the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. All right, the conscious mind is encoded in the neocortex of the brain. The neocortex of the brain is that part of the brain which you can see here, which is the topmost part of the brain, the more developed, the more advanced part of the brain. And I'll talk about that. Whereas the subconscious mind is encoded in the limbic system, and I'll talk about that, okay, in a bit. Now, that part of your conscious mind, which is, as I said, encoded in the neocortex, which is a part of the brain, controls complex cognitive processes like your thoughts, your imagination, your decision-making capacity, your intelligence, your creativity, personality, attitude. All of the things listed here are encoded in your cortex, are part of your conscious mind. So they are all part of the expressions of your mind, your ability to think. And thought is one of the fundamental powers that God has given man, the ability to think. All right, thought itself is sort of very profound, and I cannot spend time here talking about just exploring thought. All right, but thought can be as deep as anything. Thought is profound. Thought is limitless. One of the interesting things I say about thought is that thought is limitless. Thought cannot be bound by time. That's why, as you're staying there right now, where you are, you can think about the past. You can think about what happened in the first century. You can think about what happened in the 20th century. You can think about what happened in the World War, even though you were not alive during the World War I or World War II. But you can think about it. You can reflect on it. You can think about the future. You can think about what will happen next year, even though you're not there. But you can think about Christmas. You can think about tomorrow. Thought is not bound by time. You can think about things that are so small. You can think about an atom that you cannot see with your naked eye. And still yet you can think about a big planet like Venus or Jupiter that you've never been before, or man has never conquered, but you can think about it. All right. And when you picturize your thoughts, they become imaginations. So imaginations are visual thoughts, are thoughts that have pictures, images. All right. So that's imagination. All right. And that's all part of your conscious mind. And that's very important. That's not the focus of today's teaching. All right. But I just wanted to just make mention of that. Your ability to make decisions, to judge between right and wrong, to make decisions, to discriminate, to deductively reason and decide what choices you make. All right. Is still part of your conscious mind. You need to be conscious, alert, and awake to make those decisions. You decided to be here. You're here intentionally. You clicked on the link. You registered for this program. You're here by intention. It was a decision. Somebody told you about the Young Men's Masterclass. You heard about it. You saw the flyer. You were invited. You got an email. I don't know how you saw this, but you registered. And now today you've clicked on it. You're here. You've made a decision. It's a conscious decision. It's part of your conscious mind, your intelligence and creativity. All right. And they're not the same thing. Intelligence and creativity are completely different things. Okay. Intelligence speaks to your ability to derive correct answers from previously predetermined, concepts. Okay, so if I tell you 2 plus 2, what is it? You say 4. That's intelligent, an intelligent answer. Your ability to derive answers based on logic, based on your experience, based on what you've been taught and what you've learned, to come to a predetermined, predefined conclusion. That is intelligence. So when we measure your IQ, we're trying to find out your ability to give us back the answers that we have predetermined to be correct. That's when you go to the university, you get a first class. Your exam is a measure of your intelligence. That's why it will not necessarily translate to the way you will thrive in the workplace. That's why you can be a first class student and still not be an innovator, because creativity is what drives innovation. All right. Creativity is about problem solving. Creativity is not about finding an answer. Creativity is about questioning the question. So an intelligent person will answer a question. A creative person will question the question. An intelligent person will give you a correct answer to a question. The creative person will give you 10 answers to the same question. Creativity is about divergent thinking. It's about explorative thinking. It's not about being narrow-minded. It's about being open-minded. It's about being able to question laws and being able to challenge the norm and being able to question institutions and being able to challenge authorities. It's about blazing the trail and finding out why must people behave this way? Why must people behave this way? That is creativity. Question it. Why? Why must it be like this? I know one day my son, who is privileged to be born here in Australia, one day asked that why is it that as a man, why as African men, we scream a lot, we shout a lot, we are too, and one day he was like, Dad, just chill. I know, he did something wrong, and I was just so like, said, chill. I know, yeah, but and to be honest, it wasn't minimizing what is done wrong, but when he watches our Hollywood movies, our Nollywood movies, is the same thing, isn't it? A man wants to express romance, they have to scream. Everybody scream, Funke! We're so, must we be like that? Must we behave the way? Some of these things is conditioning, the way we have been conditioned to think somehow. We have been conditioned not to trust each other. We have been conditioned, or that person to be suspicious of each other. All right. Now, divergent thinking breaks that now. You're not thinking based on group. You reject groupthink. All right. You reject groupthink. Let me not spend too much time. Your personality and your attitude. Am I communicating? Let me look for my audience. I just can't do without. Like, I don't like speaking to a slide. Let me stop sharing my screen for a second and let me just see people. Come on, guys. Is there anything in the chat box? Let me see. Are we talking? Great. Good. Am I seeing my people? Good. Alrighty. Yes. Okay. Good. I just want to be sure. That I am communicating with you guys. Alrighty. Okay. So, yeah, this is much better now. Let me I figured a way out with this. So on my second screen, I can, yes, beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so let me move on. Can I go on, Shay? Can I go on? All right, God bless you, sir. All right, okay, so let's go to the next thing now, which is the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind, as I said, is encoded in the limbic system. And what does this do? It stores your non-conscious habits, your behavioral patterns, those things that you're not conscious about, the habits, the behaviors. And this is back to what I was talking about, the conditioning. The fact that somebody talks to you, you have to raise your voice. The way you're already primed for action, your emotions, your memory, all right? All of these things are encoded in your subconscious mind. We're talking about the wholesome mind, but I just need to break it down for you so that you understand exactly how the mind works. That yes, there's a conscious mind, there's a conscious expression of the mind, which refers to your thoughts, your personality, your decision-making, creativity, intelligence. But beneath that, there's the subconscious as well, which is not seen, all right, of course, which has to do with the behavioral patterns. The subconscious mind sets you up for the kinds of behaviors and habits that you have. It regulates your emotions. It's where your memory is stored, all right? And so it sets you up. It just regulates that internal environment and creates what we call homeostasis. It sets you up for your actions. It primes you for your action. And when you are primed to behave in a particular way, you are conditioned to behave in a particular way, you would often respond in a particular way. And it's very important to understand that some of this can actually reinforce negative behavioral patterns. Some of this can reinforce negative behavioral patterns. It's very, very important to understand this. All right. And I would go I'll go deeper into this as we explore this. Very important. I like this slide. Okay. That your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, all right, are parts of your mind. Of course, your conscious mind, your willpower, your analysis, and your decision makings. You're all part of the conscious mind, but that's just a little bit. There's more to your mind than what is expressed externally. Your belief systems, your values, self-confidence, emotions, all of these things are within the subconscious. Why is it that people resist change? Why are people, wired in a way, or not, well, not wired, but why do people behave in certain ways? Oftentimes the behavior is what you see, but there are a lot of things that underlie that behavior, and it's in the subconscious mind. All right. And that's just because of the way they are conditioned to think and to behave. All right. In the interest of time, I will go a bit faster. Now, let me just explain this to you, and I'll come back to the brain. I've just talked about the mind. I'll come back to the brain. Okay. Now, what you must understand is that your brain itself, as an organ, constantly undergoes change. All right. So your brain, nobody is hardwired to be somehow. Even people who are psychopaths or sociopaths, who have certain behavioral problems or psychological problems or mental health problems, they're not exempted from this fact. All right, that the brain itself is subject to change. The brain can be modulated, can be changed through experience. Our experiences in life change our brain. And this is, we know that certainly from birth to the age of 25, your brain is in a constant state of development. All right. Your brain is in a constant state of development, and it's through experience of life, through the sensations that your brain is exposed to. You learn, and your brain changes, your brain learns, your brain adapts. But we now know that this does not stop. Our initial thought was that brain development or brain change or brain, what we call plasticity. When we use the word plasticity, it refers to change. That change that occurs in the brain, we always, in the past, it was thought to end in the early 20s or mid 20s. But we know that that's not the way it is now. But the reality is that a lot of the customizations of the brain happens when we're young. All right. And so the brain is designed to be customized in that early part of life. And those algorithms and circuitry they persist throughout life. And that's why it is very important to understand that experiences change the brain. And certain experiences can actually be harmful for the brain and the mind. All right. Very important to understand. But the good thing is that the brain can be modulated, and you can develop new experiences that will help promote your brain health. And I will come to that. Okay. Now, one of the things that that happens in the brain is, of course, the stress. All right. And we can explore stress today, but just to put it this way, that stress itself, all right, is not necessarily a negative thing. But of course, when stress gets to the point where it's not managed or expressed properly, it can be harmful to the brain. All right. And that's because when you're in a stressful situation, there's a state of emotional activation, what we call physiological arousal. And I'm going to explain what that is. That's a natural response to stress. So when you're going through stress, your brain is activated. So the emotional centers of your brain are activated. And in response to the stressful situation, whether it's in your family, whether it's an experience you're having at work, whether it's a spiritual experience, whether it's a health challenge, whatever it is that you're going through. All right. And some of you may be going through stressful situations right now. Some of you may be going through hard times, or you're facing a bit of challenge, or the disappointments, or this, pandemic has really, affected you in any way, one way or the other. Whatever it is, what happens is that when you're in that state of stress, you have, there's a physiological arousal, there's an activation of your subconscious, the limbic system. And what that does is that it pumps your body with hormones. Okay, look at this, our brain's response to stress. All right, so we have the fight, flight, or freeze response. So when we're exposed to stress, all right, what happens is that our body reacts in that regard. So we either fight the situation, we fly away from the situation, or sometimes we just freeze and not even react in that situation. Depends on the situation and depends on the individual. But what we do know is that in that situation, the limbic system, all right, which is in the subconscious, often takes over. And when it takes over, it overrides the conscious mind, and makes us act. And sometimes we act on impulse. So some what people call the limbic hijack. Sometimes we act on impulse. We act without thinking deeply. We make irrational decisions. We act without really considering things. We make choices in a haste. So when you're in a stressful situation, sometimes you may not give enough room to properly think through or process things. And you may say that's why you often, when you are angry or you are having a quarrel with somebody, whether it's your spouse or someone else, you may say things and behave, oh yeah, my emotions got the better of me. All right, because you've not, but the reality is that if you have take time to really think about what you say, you will not probably will not have said what you said. All right. And so that comes to emotional mastery, which is something completely different. Now I'm talking about the impact of stress, because we all go through stress. Stress impacts on our brain and our minds, and that can affect our behavior. All right, particularly if it is not well regulated. Okay, very important for you to understand that. So usually when people are going through a lot of stress, all right, we're going to the wholesome mind, and I'm going to talk about that, but I'm just giving you this background. When people are going through a lot of stress, what happens in their limbic system? That's subconscious. The emotions are up and down. They are very, very labile, emotionally labile. There's a bit of aggression. Motivation and instincts, become more difficult to regulate and to control. Memory formation can become potentially impaired. People are reflexive, they act on impulse when they're stressed. They don't think deeply about things. They take, the wrong choices, they take the wrong turn, and they do things that are out of control. Recently, I had a young, one of my patients, going through some stressful situation in their marriage. Young couple, Christian couple. And this young man was just so frustrated with his wife. And he just left home one day, and it was just not, for about a year, he had actually been depressed. And he never, of course, there were leaders in the church, and even though he was battling with depression and their marriage wasn't working well, they were keeping appearances because they were leaders in the church, but their home was things were not working at home. And he was going to work, and life wasn't good. They didn't have a child that was also contributing to the issues. And one day he just drove into the bush, and he had a car accident. All right, and of course the police found him and everything, and they brought him. So he came to my practice. I'm talking about a Nigerian guy. I'm not talking about I'm talking about a Nigerian guy. All right, and came to my practice, and we started working through this, and we realized that this guy was attempting suicide. There were no skid marks when he went into the bush. This was a pure suicide attempt. And by the time we dug deep and tried to help, we realized that this young man, he was still maybe in his late 20s, early 30s. All right. So much, it was in a dysfunctional family, and that's so much that overwhelmed him. And of course, he didn't seek for help. There was no mentor, there was no coach, there was no support system. They were just keeping appearances because both of them were workers and leaders in the church. All right. And and the wife would tell me many times they would fight to church in the car. They would argue and argue and argue, but when they get to church, they will smile to everybody and they will keep all appearances. And then when they get into the car, they continue the arguments, and they would not talk for days or weeks, even though they live in the same house. And of course, those chronic emotional injuries accumulate, and what they do is that they alter the brain's functions and the behavior. All right. So when people are going through stress, they release a lot of stress hormones. Now, the stress hormones are actually meant to be helpful. Stress is actually a good thing. Stress is meant to keep us alert, to mobilize our energy, to boost our immunity. So stress, we need a little bit of stress. Stress, in fact, the stress hormones our stress hormones are naturally highest in the morning. When we wake up in the morning, you have a bit of an adrenaline kick, cortisol kick. It's right there high in your body. That keeps you going. You get into the shower, you get out, you do your prayers or whatever, you get into the car, you're on your way to work, you're motivated, you're alert, you're ready. That's a little bit of stress. All right, we need a little bit of stress in our lives to keep us going. The problem is when we cannot modulate it properly. All right, when it cannot be well regulated, when things go wrong. What then happens is that we exist or we operate in an intense level of emotional activation. And this emotional activation persists even when the stressful event is gone. So we continue to have very high stress hormone levels, all right? And we just continue to operate in that intense level of stress that is counterproductive and that will not be helpful to us. Am I communicating with people? Are you with me? All right, let me, am I making sense? Are you getting something? Are you getting something? Talking about stress, it can go wrong. Things can go wrong, right? And when they go wrong, they can be potentially problematic. Okay. So, traumatic experiences are certainly a common cause of stress. And I have to talk to those people who are here, you've gone through some traumatic experiences in your life. Certainly, they can be powerful. They can be powerful enough, and those traumatic experiences need to be dealt with. At the age of 6, I went to my neighbor's house to play. I was young, I was 6, just went to have a, to play with my friend who was in the next apartment with us. And while I was there, I think we just fell asleep on the couch. And something happened to me that day. They had a woman there in the house who was a house help or domestic assistant or whatever you call them. And she did something to me that day. And even though I was 6, all right, I actually describe this in my book. I never told anyone. I knew what happened. I saw what happened. The image is still clear in my mind up till now. I don't know what the woman would look like now. Apparently, I heard she's passed away. Okay, but I remember what happened that day. I was 6. I can't forget. And when she did that and finished, she left. I stayed there pretending as if I was asleep. I stood up and I went back home. I never told anyone until last year when I wanted to release my book. That was the first time I told my mom, so she won't get shocked when she reads the book. But it was much later, actually, I told my wife before then, it was much later that I realized the impact of that traumatic experience on my sexuality and some of the things that I later experienced later. So traumatic experiences can be quite profound. That's for a child. What about for an adult? And it may not be in the area of sexual abuse. It may be in other areas. Okay, it may be in other areas of life. When they are not well processed, they can be quite dangerous and quite problematic. All right, very important for you to understand that. Okay, let me not bother you with this very academic slide. But the effects of trauma may not even be immediate. Sometimes the effects of trauma may be long-standing. We know that 50% of people who have post-traumatic stress, all right, did not even have an immediate reaction to the trauma. So a lot of people go through events, traumatic events, which they don't talk about, they've not dealt with, they've not even processed properly, whether that's through spiritual means, through counseling, through, proper social support. You've gone through a traumatic experience, you've not processed it properly. You've just been like a man. They say, be a man. And you saw that video, man up, men don't cry. You've gone through a traumatic, you've lost a loved one, or maybe something horrible had happened. But you've not talked about it. You just internalize it. You just, macho man, are strong. My mind is strong. Like, what do you call that thing? There's something rock. I've forgotten it. I'm a strong man. Strong men don't cry. Strong men don't show emotions. Strong men don't, no. So you don't properly process the trauma. Now, that doesn't mean you go to the other extreme of feeling guilty and walking in depression and lack of self-esteem. No, that's not what I'm talking about. But when you experience traumatic experiences and you do not process them properly, the effects may not be immediate. You may rely on a little bit of cortisol and a little bit of, stress to keep you going, but that would not last for a long time. And we know that a lot of people would later have stressful, situations later down the track, can trace this back to trauma that has not been properly processed in the past. And we know that can affect kids. This is the MRI, it's actually a PET scan of a brain of a child. This is what a healthy child looks like. And you can look at the limbic system in this area, looks healthy. But look at a child that is abused. This is a child, actually, this is a real scan of a child who was an orphan in Romania, who was institutionalized shortly after birth. You can see that the development of the child has been stunted. And of course, this child may later grow up to catch up. But if this child is not in the right environment, they may never catch up. And there's so many people who don't even catch up. All right. So many people who don't even catch up. So it's very important that you understand this, okay, that trauma can actually affect the brain and can change the brain. So things can get complicated when you've gone through a traumatic experience. And what tends to happen afterwards for some people is that they go into this period of avoidance. They just avoid other people. They don't interact. You know, you become self-isolated. You don't want to be. And avoidance is not physical. It doesn't mean you go into isolation. You may still attend programs and all that, but you will never be vulnerable. You will never allow yourself to feel that, yeah, you know what, I need help. I need help in this. I've got an anger issue. I've got a problem with my emotions. I've got a problem with my thinking pattern. I struggle with evil thoughts. I struggle with sexual, immoral or sexual desires. I'm a young person, but I'm struggling with pornography, masturbation. So, maybe you're there and you're still struggling with masturbation, pornography, sexual, immoral behavior and things like that. And you just find a way to numb all those feelings by doing a lot of all these things that are not appropriate. Okay. All right. And then you go into the state of emotional numbness, and then learned helplessness. And I need to talk about learned helplessness. I was counseling somebody just 1 or 2 hours before this session. I just wanted to counsel for over 1 hour. And it was a woman. I was talking to this woman who was also having a problem in a marriage. Of course, sorry, I'm a pastor, so I do a lot of counseling. It's Saturday, it's 10:49 p.m. So we're rounding up and we've got church in the morning, Sunday morning. But this evening, I was just ended up in a counseling session. In fact, I have to use this as an excuse. It was about 1 hour to go. So I said, my sister, I've got to talk later because I've got administration in actually 2 hours time. So we had to end up after speaking for 1 hour. And our problem was learned helplessness. Our husband has failed us so many times. The marriage is now, they're separated at the moment. And we're trying to bring the two of them back together. In Australia, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about people here, all right, who have they're married, Christian workers, not just workers, ordained ministers, who have just gone apart. And they're currently living separately, all right? But she's been hurt. And she told me, she said, I cannot bring myself. I cannot bring myself to be with him. All right. And I told him, I said, that's learned helplessness. Every time you suffer a defeat, it's very common with addicts. All right. Every time an addict falls to their temptation, their brain learns to be helpless. So that every subsequent temptation becomes easy to fall to. It's called learned helplessness, and it's a subconscious principle. It's something that happens in the subconscious. Every time you fall to something, there's something that weakens. You lose virtue. There's a part of your mind that becomes weakened. Every time you're not challenged with the same thing, you just fumble, you crumble, you stumble easily. Okay? You give up. You're not able to try. You're not able to push yourself anymore because you have fallen over and over again to the same, on the same stone. You've stumbled on the same stone over and over again. Learned helplessness. And that's something that plagues a lot of young men these days. I remember when I was in the university, we used to, offer help to some young people. And I remember a young man who would come to me and would say, "Oh man, brother, every he was struggling with pornography and masturbation at the time, and he would say, "Oh, you know what? I just can't help it." He will come to church and he will say, "Oh, God, help me." And then within 1 or 2 days, he will see something, he will fall to the same thing again, and he would just sink there, and he would not come to church because he would feel so guilty. He'd be like, "You know what? What's the point? I can't do it. You know what? I'm an addict. That's me. I can't help myself. If I repent today, yes, I know I'm doing what's bad. I know this is horrible." But if I come again and I try, I'm gonna fail. So you learn to become helpless. That's what happens when there's chronic, traumatic stress. When your mind is exposed to that, and if it's not well processed, and you're not getting the right things, and you're not seeking for help, you're not letting it out, you're not being coached properly, or being counseled properly, or being, and even if spiritual help, you need help in those situations. Okay, all right. How am I going for time? Please just let me know so that I just quickly regulate how I'm going. Okay. All right. And over time, people become poorly responsive to the environment. And of course, that can become much more problematic. Okay. I'm just going to rush now in the interest of time. So pretty much, what are the strategies that we would use to get this, rewire your brain, heal your mind, get yourself in the right place. Can you just let me know how many more minutes I have? Sorry, just if you can send me a private message for that, please, um, just to help me. All right, so we've talked about stress and trauma and the effects on the brain. Okay, how can you get this wholeness or this wholesomeness? To be wholesome is to be complete, to be entire, to be robust, to be sound. To be sound. When you use the word wholesome, it means you are promoting health, soundness, robustness. Okay, how can you have that kind of mind that is sound, that is robust? Okay, and I'm going to take that very quickly in the next few minutes. All right, okay. I'm not going to talk about the systems in the interest of time. I'm just going to go straight to this, okay? Number one, I'm going to give you a few principles. Number one, developing a positive attitude. A positive attitude, very important. A positive attitude. And you've got to be intentional about your outlook to life. You have to be intentional about, the kind of things you surround yourself with, because developing a positive attitude is not just a mental thing. It's something that you have to intentionally do to surround yourself. All right. And that starts by you being in a place like this, where you're hearing words that will give you courage and strength to go through whatever challenge you're going through. And whether it's a mental challenge or a physical challenge, a career challenge, you've heard the first talk on career and how you can navigate some of the hurdles you experience. Okay. So you need to develop and, you need to surround yourself, put yourself in that ambience, that atmosphere that will cultivate positive attitude, because that's even helpful for you. That's good for your health. We know that people who have a positive attitude, this is science. Science has showed us people that have a positive attitude have less memory decline. They do well functionally, they function properly, they handle stress, but the brain works properly. Your memory, your ability to function, your ability to recall things, your ability to process things, to be creative, to be innovative improves when you're positive. When you're always negative and you're not seeing the right side of things and you're always going back to the past, always looking at the past, oh, I failed there, you're not going to see new opportunities. You're not going to see new opportunities when you keep looking back, when you keep looking at how you failed, when you keep looking at how you've let everything down. You have to start looking up. You have to start having a positive affect, a positive approach. Somebody said a positive approach to life. This is not just all inspirational stuff. No, I'm talking, there's a science behind you intentionally wanting to be positive. And how, if you're a person of faith, one way you can be positive is through praise, is to cultivating a life of praise, a life of gratitude, a life of thanksgiving, because that creates an ambience of positivity in you, and that will make you very, very functional as a person. We know that, this is a very common study that was done in people. They checked how many people had common cold, the virus, all right, and they correlated that with positive attitude, the positive affect, and they found that those that had a positive emotional state had fewer colds in winter. This was a study done in the United States. All right, that those that were always down and negative and complaining and screaming and never seeing the good part of, they were the ones that were much more susceptible to illnesses, because that has a way of affecting even your own immune system. Secondly, purpose discovery. Listen, if you are here and you don't have clarity about what you should be doing, you're going to live a frustrated life. Feeling like you have a reason to get out of the bed every day is the secret to longevity. And longevity, not just in the physical, in terms of your assignment, in terms of what what you do on a daily basis. If you're going to actually have a wholesome mind, learn how to manage and to develop new experiences. I said experiences change the brain. Experiences change the brain. So no matter what stress and traumatic experience you've gone through, no matter how low you are, and no matter the challenge you're going through right now, if you're going to develop a wholesome mind, you need to understand what your purpose is, what your assignment is, what you're called to do, and you need to find yourself doing what you've been called to do. Otherwise, you're going to live in perpetual frustration. Very important to understand that, okay? You see, there's no doubt about that. Look at this study, okay? Purposeful individuals live longer than their counterparts did during the 14 years assessment. There's no doubt about that. This is a whole study done, and they found that people who had a sense of purpose, they lived longer. They were just, they had something to do. Look at that. Even when you compare that with health, with mortality and with cardiovascular disease, people who have a high sense of purpose in life were associated with a reduced risk of mortality and of other illnesses. I am backing this up with science to illustrate to you the point of what you're doing. And I'm using a different technique because I know I'll be followed by Bishop Bob, who will give us more scriptures. All right. But I'm just using this to illustrate this point to you as well. What about the power of expectation? Yes, that's another thing. Third thing, faith. The power of expectation is still linked with that positive attitude. If you're going to develop a wholesome mind, you have to have that positivity. You have to have that sense of expectation and hope and confidence that, yes, you're going to achieve what you've been called to achieve, and you're going to do what you've been called to do. And I can't, let me just quickly, I know my time is up now, but let me just quickly sort of illustrate this, the placebo effect. All right. And this is sort of a medical term that we use often, that, the placebo effect speaks to the fact that sometimes just by thinking that something would help you, you can get help from it. All right. Let me give you a very good example. My mom is in Australia at the moment. She's been here since, before the pandemic last year. So she rang me and said she's in another state with my sister. My sister is also here. And she rang me and said it was a weekend and she couldn't see a dentist. She had a dental problem. She actually had a dental infection and she wanted an antibiotic to help her. All right. So a GP, a doctor was also closed. It was in the afternoon, going to the evenings. She couldn't find someone. So she said, instead of going to the emergency department, can I just write her a script for an antibiotic, a prescription, so she can go to the chemist, the pharmacy, get the antibiotic, and then, she can take it. So I said, okay, well, I don't like doing this, but I'll do it for you, just so that the next day you can go to your doctor. So I wrote the prescription, sent it by email to the chemist. They dispensed it, and my mom took it. And do you know that within less than 30 minutes to 1 hour, my mom called back and said, Niyi, the pain is gone. Everything is gone. And I laughed. I laughed because I knew that biologically it wasn't possible. I knew that biologically the antibiotic would have spent like 30, 45 minutes in her tummy anyway before it's absorbed. But for her, the pain was gone. That is the power of expectation. Let me tell you, if I had given my mom sugar, she would have, in a pill, the pain would have still gone. My mom had so much faith and confidence in that pill that if I take this pill, my pain will go away. Our pain, well, that's the placebo effect. Of course, I couldn't convince her. When I told her, I said, no, antibiotic, that's too quick. No, she said, no. It worked straight away. In fact, immediately I swallowed it, I started feeling it. I knew it was not biologically possible. That is the placebo effect. All right. We can't talk about that in much more detail. Let me just quickly. And finally, I talk about sleep. Power of sleep. Because you know what? Brain repair and neuroplasticity occurs in the state of deep sleep and rest. When you are in that state of deep sleep, your brain is repaired, your mind is restored, all the toxins are cleared. All right. It's very, very essential, because that's where your memory is consolidated and neural networks are built in your brain and in your mind. So you must always remember that. So if you're a young man here between the ages of 18 and 64, 7 to 9 hours of sleep. 7 to 9 hours of sleep, very essential if you're going to have a wholesome mind. And finally, sorry, I put this there, as part of sleep, have a gratitude journal. One of the ways you can actually, for those who struggle with sleep, is to have a to journal. All right, keep a journal. And in fact, this is one of the ways you can also promote a positive attitude. All right, have a journal, have a gratitude journal, have a way of documenting things that are positive and the things you appreciate about yourself and about other people as well. And if you're a person of faith here, use that opportunity, that your relationship with God, by spending time in prayers and worship and praise, you create that atmosphere of positivity, of faith, and of hope. And that can help you in your journey. Above all, if you're going through a tough time, stressful situation, you've had a traumatic experience that you feel that is not been properly processed, seek for help. Talk to somebody. You don't have to man up, like that video said, manning. Seek for help. If you're going to create a wholesome mind, you're going to have a wholesome mind, you must learn to be vulnerable, and you must learn to seek for help when you need help. If you need assistance, seek for assistance. If you're struggling with something, talk to somebody. There are mentors, there are coaches that can help you do that. I hope this has been a blessing to you. God bless. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, sir. What an amazing session. Teaching us, these all ideas is something we have to really soak in and really practice. One thing literally I could continually pick on is how experiences change the brain. And as you mentioned, sometimes we do not even know the impact of what has happened until later years, and then when we can't even really handle. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. I'm just, because our time is fast spent, I'm just going to ask if there is anyone that has got any question. Do you just want to take one question? I know Dr. Niyi needs to run due to the time difference, but want to see if there is anybody who's got a question. Please, you can raise up your hand, and we'll take the question. Quick one. I know Bishop Bob will be joining us now shortly. And then we are just going to have a song ministration by Mr. Tatabasi. I'm not sure whether he's online right now. If there's any question you've got, please let us know. But I think I just want to quickly ask a question. And I would love, I know that it's not a very simple answer that we can get for this question, but if there's a way we can just get it. And I think the question is, for those who are dealing with a certain level of addiction, what would be the immediate, I know there is no quick fix to handling addictions, but what would be your immediate advice? We talked about learned helplessness. So you've tried it, you stopped, you tried it, you keep going back to it. So what would be your immediate advice or counsel for someone in that regard? And then when we are done with that, since we don't have any other question, Mr. Tatabasi will be taking the song rendition, and then we'll have the video introduction for Bishop Bob. I think I have a question. So someone is saying, is there an advice for someone who suspects they have ADHD?
That's a very simple. If you're suspecting ADHD, for those who don't know, is what is called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's a psychiatric disorder. So if I'll say see someone, say doctor.
Okay, thank you.
All right. For the other question you asked, I think the most important thing for anyone going through addiction is an accountability partner. I think that's the most important thing. But of course, I think even before then, it's you ownership, having a sense of ownership, owning the situation and wanting to be. I see a lot of people who reach out, who have, addictions, but they're not ready. They're not ready to let go. They listen to a teaching and they feel so bad, but they're not really ready to let go. I don't think anybody can be free of an addiction without being intentional. All right, until you get to the point where you really are, I'm tired of this. I want to be free. I want a different life. I don't want to be held bound to my desires, because our desires are not meant to control us. We are meant to have mastery over our desires and our feelings and our emotions. That's the way we are created. So if your desires have mastery over you, then you are not living to the fullness of your potential. And until you get to the point where you feel like, yes, I want mastery over these desires, then you will find ways to beat your accountability partner. So once you go to that point, yes, I think the next most important step would be to have somebody you can be accountable to, somebody that will hold you. It may be your wife, it may be somebody else, it may be, whoever that person is, and that person would hold you. And of course, depending on what the addiction is, you go to, because these things are, we can't talk about addictions today, but there are biological changes that occur in the brain in people who have addictions. Whether it's to the same pathways in the brain that are activated when people are addicted to cocaine is the same pathways that people who are addicted to pornography. The same pathways. So your brain does not necessarily know the difference between a cocaine hit, a heroin hit, and when you see a naked picture of a woman. The same pathways are activated, and there's a release of dopamine that gives that reward. Of course, it's very transient. It goes high and then you go very low after a while. And that's why after the whole experience, you feel cheap. You feel like nothing. All right. And nothing will match that experience again until further exposure. And that's why you notice, for example, those who are addicted to pornography will start from one type of pornography and they will just get worse and worse and worse, because in order to get the height of the experience they have to try newer things. And of course, that just sets them further away. Same thing with drugs, okay? So that's what I'd say. Let me just say thank you for having me again, okay? God bless you. Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Shay, for having me. God bless you.